channel, hit that bell notification. What do we have here? We have Sue Bird, not a comparison. Let's take a look. They're talking about a second. That gives me the same feeling. Be further from the truth. You guys, y'all just keep reaching.
It's like, oh, but how tight is her crossover really? How hard was that shot really? Oh, a mid-range is a mid-range. Like any.
I'm sorry. It was boring to people. Everybody watch it? Clearly not. The numbers show that. Like, come on, with to watch. What are we talking about, bro?
Justice. Is there something to that?
The host opens frustrated with what he sees as Sue Bird and Megan Rapinoe overcomplicating a straightforward comparison between Caitlin Clark and Paige Bueckers. That frustration is real, and it reflects a genuine, recurring debate in Wenbei media about why these two players get covered so differently.
Because they didn't really know. They clearly didn't know. And that's where Paige's game lives. It lives off the dribble. It lives in the mid-range.
It's not that we didn't know y'all could play. It's just the shit was boring to people. Like, why can't that be the realistic thing? It was boring to people. I'm sorry. It was boring to people. I love Sue Bird. Sue Bird was my favorite point guard ever. Diana Taurasi was my favorite.
The Yukon bloodline reference is a fair, real observation about the program's outsized pipeline into the league. Plenty of former Huskies do occupy prominent media roles now, and that's a legitimate thing to note when discussing who's shaping the conversation around these players.
What are we talking about, man? What are we talking about?
Is there something to that she's not and it's really not in comparison to Caitlin or to anyone else, but just sort of her, like, is that the kind of person that this society and that this culture like props up to be the biggest star or like the most powerful person in sports? I think there's something to that. I don't know exactly how.
See, you're doing that because of what you are. And we are fine with what you and Sue are. That's cool. I don't care who.
Setting up the actual clip before reacting to it is the right move here, and it's worth giving Bird and Rapinoe's real commentary a fair hearing before deciding whether the criticism lands.
Also wonder if there's some kind of cultural reason for this. Paige is an out gay player. She's been explicit in her support for racial justice.
Oh my God. Now we're talking about Paige being a lesbian. What are we talking about? So when it was Angel Reese, it was race. It was about race. It was black and white. Oh, she's popular because she's white. You can't say that with Paige. So now you're going to say, oh, it's because she's outwardly gay.
Here's Bird's actual quote, and it's a real substantive basketball argument that Bueckers' style, historically undervalued mid-range and off-the-dribble scoring, doesn't get the same credit Clark's long-range shooting does, and that Clark's logo threes became something skeptics couldn't argue with.
I think, wow type plays, but it's not that logo three, even though she does that too from time to time, but it's not the same way in which Caitlin did it. And I think that right there is definitely a differentiator for sure.
Caitlin is exciting. Paige isn't so exciting to watch. Sorry. It's that simple.
Rapinoe's real follow-up is worth including too. She's specifically pushing back on the idea that Clark's threes are popular because they resemble dunking, arguing instead it's genuinely her whole style of play that generates excitement. That's a real, more nuanced point than the setup suggests.
Already. Can we stop? Sue Bird, Megan Rapinoe, all of y'all. Can y'all just stop with the foolishness? Stop with the nonsense. Let's stop acting like this is so confusing and hard to understand and throwing in all these other scenarios and reasoning for why Caitlin Clark is who she is.
The point about men trying to replicate Clark's logo 3 shot themselves, and the broader observation that women's basketball skill has historically been dismissed with comments like, anyone could do that, reflects a real, well-documented pattern in how women's sports have been covered and discussed for decades.
NBA runs deep. Gino has put a lot of these players in the league. It is what it is. They are continuing to pretend like they don't understand why Caitlin Clark is who she is. They keep trying to force this comparison with Paige Bueckers that is not a comparison. Let's take a look. They're talking about sexuality, all of this stuff that does not matter. None of us care. Y'all can't say race because Paige and Caitlin are both white, so you couldn't use.
The host's pushback here, that it wasn't lack of knowledge but genuine excitement level driving audience interest, is a fair, competing explanation worth taking seriously alongside Bird and Rapinoe's read, since both things can be partially true about the same underlying trend.
It's not about her logo 3 equaling dunking for us men. That couldn't be further from the truth. You guys, y'all just keep reaching and saying anything.
They're like, let me test this out. I'm sure managers are doing it. I'm sure faculty's doing it. Every man in the world who has stepped in that building wants to try that. Because it, in this way, was finally this equalizer that you couldn't argue. It was what it was. And I think women's basketball in general.
And this exchange is genuinely one of the more honest moments in the clip. The host openly admitting he knew women's basketball players were great, but found the product less exciting to watch personally, which is a real, if blunt, admission that complicates any single explanation for Clark's specific popularity surge.
And Caitlin are both white, so you couldn't use that. Let's listen to what they have to say about this. This is nonsense.
I think the way Paige plays, not just the efficiency, but just the way she scores, I think historically has been overlooked in women's basketball players. And that is what helped Caitlin separate herself. The logo 3 and the distance and the range and the way she shoots it off the dribble, all of that put together, that is the antidote to dunking. It was like we finally had something where people...
Here's where the conversation shifts into genuinely contested territory. Bird and Rapinoe floating the idea that there might be a cultural dimension tied to Bueckers being an out gay athlete who's been vocal about racial justice, wondering aloud whether that affects who gets elevated as the biggest star. That's a real, if speculative, theory about marketability, not an attack on anyone.
Exciting style of play, Sue. Come on.
I think that a lot of guys, sadly, they've been able to put our game down and not respect it. Because they didn't really know. They clearly didn't know. And that's where Paige's game lives. It lives off the dribble. It lives in the mid-range.
It's not that we didn't know y'all could.
The host's reaction is strong and worth hearing as his genuine opinion, arguing that bringing sexuality into this specific conversation feels like reaching, especially pointing out that Clark has also spoken up for black women's pay equity, which undercuts any framing that support for social causes alone explains the popularity gap.
Can y'all just stop with the foolishness? Stop with the nonsense. Let's stop acting like this is so confusing and hard to understand and throwing in all these other scenarios and reasoning for why Caitlin Clark is who she is versus why Paige Bueckers is who she is, which is still a great, great basketball player. But you guys keep trying to...
It's worth being precise here about what Bird and Rapinoe actually said versus how it gets characterized afterward. They floated this as one possible cultural factor among several, not as the single, definitive explanation for Clark's popularity, and that distinction matters for evaluating the host's response fairly.
NBA runs deep. You know, Gino has put a lot of these players in the league. It is what it is. They are continuing to pretend like they don't understand why Caitlin Clark is who she is. They keep trying to force this comparison with Paige Bueckers that is not a comparison. Let's take a look. They're talking about sexuality, all of this stuff that does not matter. None of us care. Y'all can't say race because Paige and Caitlin are both white, so you couldn't use.
The attendance statistic about Dallas ranking low in the league is a real, checkable data point, though attributing that entirely to any single cause, whether style of play, media coverage, or anything else, oversimplifies what's likely a genuinely multi-factor business story.
Women, we did not care. That was not the determining factor on if we're going to watch, if we think her game is fun or exciting to watch. What are we talking about, bro?
Justice and supporting black women and talking about that, like, is
supporting black women. Caitlin Clark went on stage last year and outwardly spoke out and spoke up for black women. She did the same thing as Paige.